This is Greek with David Hutchison. Adjectives, pronouns, and numerals of the first and third declensions. So these words that we're going to study today will use endings that you've already learned. They're going to use some endings from third declension and some endings from first declension. So here's the adjective pos. It occurs in masculine, feminine, and neuter, pos, possa, pon. And we would call this a 3-1-3 adjective. That means that the endings follow the third declension, first declension, third declension in the masculine, feminine, and neuter. 3-1-3, third declension, first declension, third declension. So if you look down the masculine column, you'll see some endings that are third declension endings. So remember we learned saucian, ace, on, sias. In the feminine column, it follows the first declension. Here's that combo pattern, a, ace, a, on, I, own, ice, os. And then again on the neuter, it follows the third declension pattern, none, os, e, none, a, own, si, a. So third declension, first declension, third declension. So pos, pontos, ponti, ponta. Now remember, on third declension nouns or adjectives that follow the third declension, to find the stem, you take the ending off of the genitive singular form. So we have P, alpha, nu, tau, pont. And then we're adding the endings to that stem. So that's why we have pontos, ponti, ponta, and then in the plural, pontes, ponton, posse, pontos. So that's the third declension pattern. The feminine, again, is this alpha combo pattern, passa, passes, passe, passon, passai, passon, passais, passas. And then the neuter is pon, pontos, ponti, pon. Remember that the nominative and the accusative in neuter always look the same. Now over in the plural, ponta, ponton, posse, ponta. So this is one I want you to know. It's 3-1-3, third declension, first declension, third declension. So what does this adjective mean? It basically means all or every, and some variations thereof. But let's look at some specific examples. It can do different things depending upon different positions. And you can look all of these up in a lexicon, and then in some first-year grammars, they'll discuss these different options. In the predicate position, which means that there's no article immediately before the adjective, pos will mean all. So here's pantes hoi angoi, all the angels. In the attributive position, that's where there is an article right before the adjective. Pos means whole. Ton, panta, chronon, the pos time, the whole time. When pos is going with a noun that has no article, it's anarthrous. Pos can mean every or all. So in the singular, every. So pon, dendron, agathon, every good tree. Carpus, kalus, poie, produces or makes good fruit. Pon, dendron, agathon, carpus, kalus, poie, every good tree produces good fruit. These, of course, are the words of Jesus, reminding us that if you are a good tree, and what does that mean? Of course, that means that you are a Christian tree, you will produce good fruit. Good works are not necessary to obtain salvation, but good works are the necessary outcome of salvation. So if you don't have good works, you've never been saved. That's not what gets you saved, but it's what proves it. Every good tree produces good fruit. Then here's a form of pos with a plural anarthrous noun, pantos anthropous, all men. Now remember, as we've said before, agreement does not mean that the endings have to look the same. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But are they the same case? Are they the same gender? Are they the same number? Pos can work by itself. We would say it's being used substantively. It could mean something like everyone or all people or all things. So here's Mark 1:37. Pantes zetusense. Everyone is looking for you. And then occasionally, pos can mean something like full or pure, such as James 1:2, pasan karan hegesaste, consider it pure joy. So these are some of the options for the adjective pos that basically means all, and it can have some nuances depending on the context. Here's the number 1. Heis mia hin. The number 1 declines. It has different endings for nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. And it has gender. It's an adjective. So if it's going with a masculine noun, it'll be masculine. If it's going with a feminine noun, it'll be feminine. If it's going with a neuter noun, it'll be neuter. Now, why is it only singular rather than plural? Well, because it's the number 1. It's inherently singular. Heis, hinos, hini, hina. That's the masculine. Feminine is following this alpha pattern of first declension. Mia, mias, mia, mian. And then again a third declension pattern. Hin, hinos, hini, hin. And once again, neuter looks the same in nominative and accusative. So we could say this one also is a 3-1-3. Third declension, first declension, third declension. Now, I do want you to pay special attention to the rough breathing mark on the masculine and on the neuter. That is very important. Now, if you didn't have that rough breathing mark, this looks a lot like the preposition ace or the preposition in. So please do pay attention to breathing marks, the rough breathing marks on these. We can make the word no one by adding the negative, either u or may, to the word one. So we can get udes in the indicative mood and medes in the non-indicative mood. Those are moods we haven't studied yet. And get the word no one. So this is a pattern that would be good to know. Now here are a couple that I don't want you to memorize. I just want you to see some of the distinctions. Here's the word paulus, which means much or many. Really, this looks a lot like endings you've seen before, just about everywhere, except the red highlighted areas. So we have paulus in the nominative masculine singular and paulun in the accusative masculine singular. And then the neuter is paulu, paulu. Otherwise, it looks exactly like endings you've seen before of the second and first declension. Paulu, paulo, then feminine a, ace, ain. All the plurals look like things you've seen before. Just have in the back of your mind, or maybe you put a little fold on the page of this chart. If you ever see this word, you don't remember what it is, you can go take a look there. Here's another one, the word megas, which means great. The stem is megal, basically everywhere, except these same 4 spots where we have megas and megan, and the neuter mega, mega. Otherwise, it's megalu, megalo, then feminine megale, megales, megale, megalein, and so forth. So I just want you to have seen these distinctions before. And then another adjective that's also common. Then here's another adjective that's common. I want you to see. I don't want you to try to memorize. But it's the adjective aletheis. That means true. So the masculine and feminine share the same forms. And then the neuter has its own form. Aletheis, alethous, alethe, alethe with eta. Plural, alethes, alethon, alethesi, alethes. Then the neuter, alethes, alethous, alethe, alethes, alethe, alethon, alethesi, alethe. Practical advice on this one is just look up the parsing in your computer program by hovering over the word when you see it. We can't do that all the time because we need to know some things in order to succeed in Greek. But when something's a bit goofy like this, we don't need to memorize things ad infinitum. So this is one, just look it up. Now let's talk about the comparison of adjectives. To compare an adjective is to give the adjectives 3 degrees. We're talking about good, better, best, pretty, prettier, prettiest, wise, wiser, wisest. The ER and the EST forms is what we're doing. So the first degree, what we would say is just the normal adjective, we would call the positive adjective. This is the normal form. So this would be good, pretty, or wise. The comparative form is the next level up. This is the ER form, such as better, prettier, wiser. And then the superlative is the highest level, the best, prettiest, or wisest. So we call running an adjective through these little suffixes, we call it comparing the adjective. In Greek, we have, just like in English, we have ER and EST. In Greek, we've got some endings that we can stick on the end and make them run through the same type of thing. So it's teros, tatos. Teros for comparative, tatos for superlative. And when it says teros, on, that means there's masculine, feminine, neuter, and it just follows all the normal endings. Tatos, on, follows all the normal endings. So we've got teros for comparative, tatos for superlative. So here's what it would look like. Dikaios is an adjective that means righteous. By the way, in Romans, you have a lot of words that are built off of this stem. This is the same stem is used in the word I justify or make righteous or declare righteous. So there's a lot of justification going on in Romans. You can see that more clearly in Greek than you can see in English. Because in English, righteous and justify don't look alike at all. But in Greek, you can see them quite simply that these are related words. So dikaios would be righteous. If we want to say more righteous, we add teros, so dikaioteros. And if we want to say most righteous, dikaiotetos. So you add teros and tatos. Dikaios, dikaioteros, dikaiotetos. Here's the word strong, iskouros. Let's add teros and tatos. Iskouroteros, iskourotetos. Stronger, strongest. Now sometimes we'll see this omicron lengthen to an omega, such as the adjective wise, which is sophos. When we add these endings, teros and tatos, this omicron will lengthen to an omega, so we have sophoteros or sophotetos. Wise, wiser, wisest. And then in English, sometimes we have adjectives that don't add ER or EST. They just make a different form. such as good, better, best. You don't say good, gooder, goodest. It changes form, so we would say they compare irregularly. And the same thing is true in Greek. So the adjective megas means great. Maidzone means greater. And then actually, maidzone in context can actually mean greatest. There's no separate form in the New Testament for this adjective. So what you have to do is look at context. When we have a comparative adjective, better, taller, wiser, stronger, in English we have to insert the word than. Better than, smarter than, prettier than, taller than. How do you do it in Greek? Well, you just put the noun that it's better than or smarter than, you put that noun in the genitive case. For example, 1 Corinthians 1:25, ta moron tu theou, the foolishness of God. And then here we have the comparative adjective, saphoteron, is wiser. And then we have the genitive, ton anthropon, is wiser than men. We don't use the genitive word of in this case. That's just one thing that genitive can do. But another thing it can do is this genitive of comparison. That's what we call this, is a genitive of comparison. So we don't use the keyword of, we use the keyword than. So you've got a comparative adjective and a genitive. We'll call this the genitive of comparison. The foolishness of God is wiser than, there's your keyword, wiser than men. Then there's another way that we can do this where we use the particle a, and that word means than.